in relationship to the human body and how, in fact, internally it affects us. You've all heard about the antioxidant properties. You've heard about the anti-inflammatory. You've heard about the microclustering. You've heard about all that. And the only hardcore evidence there ever was that is if you stick a probe, an ORP meter, in the water, you get a negative ORP. And therefore, it's presumed to be an oxidant. Well, in order for an antioxidant to work inside the human body, you have to go through a lot of steps. I mean, you drink this stuff, it gets mixed up with stomach juice, it eventually winds up in the cell somewhere. And what happens to that effect? Does it really work in the cell? And if it doesn't, you can't make that claim. But I'm going to show you that through research activities, we have been able to prove three basic things: antioxidant activity, anti-inflammatory activity, and an upregulation in the mitochondria. The mitochondria of the cell are the engine of the cell. The engine of the cell is cranked up in its performance by alkaline ionized water. And that's huge when you think about it. In other words, you drink that water and you supply extra energy. How many calories are there in water? Zero, right? Yet you are able to crank up the engine of the cell. Needless to say, you have to have a substrate. The substrate is glucose, right? Glucose is what we metabolize. You put that thing in, you drink that water, and that mitochondria can produce and metabolize more glucose more efficiently. So this is the National Immune System Laboratory. It's in Klamath Falls, Oregon, and the reason I chose this laboratory to do the studies was because up until now, no one had been able to show an antioxidant effect by regular antioxidant studies. They're called ORAC or C-ORAC studies, and they're all based on color analysis. Well, water is colorless, so it wouldn't work. This laboratory developed an assay using red cells that are deprived of antioxidants, and these red cells are then incubated with anything that's an antioxidant, and they will react, and that can be labeled with radioisotopes and show that there is in fact an antioxidant effect. And I called these people up, and I met with them, sat down with them, and they decided to give us a shot and to do these tests. Now, I had to convince people, particularly Mr. O'Shearer, because everything costs money. And what I did was to say, look, we're going to do this in tissue culture first. And these are human tissue cultures, human cells. Based on that, if the results were no good, if it didn't work out, we wouldn't have spent more than $10,000. On the other hand, if it did work out, then you had every right to expect that if you took living people, it would go ahead and translate into a living person positive effect that we could study. So sure enough, we did this, and we sent the machines down to be tested, and the water was tested. The first thing we found that the total antioxidant capacity of Kangen water, 9.5%, with an ORP around 600, was strong, and it was robust, and it was reproducible when compared to tap water from the local community, which has a pH of 8.5. Remember, almost all tap water is alkaline by nature. If it's not naturally there from the springs, the water company adds alkali to it because you don't want to corrode the pipes, okay? And so then, in addition, what we found was there was a profound effect against inflammation. Neutrophils are inflammatory cells. this is what gives you a fever when you're sick. These inflammatory cells come out to scavenge bacteria, to scavenge inflammatory cytokines, and so on. And when we take the Kangen water and incubate that with these neutrophils, their activity is slowed down, it's subdued. It doesn't cause as many granules to come out and cause an inflammatory effect. And that is statistically significant and profound. And when you think about that, why do so many people, for example, have chronic backaches, chronic this and that, chronic inflammatory stuff, really do feel better? I mean, if you have 100 people taking Kangen water for the first time, how many do you think will have a positive or a good effect from the water? I bet you more than 80%. Mm-hmm. And I've seen this 100 times all over the country. Everybody talks about that. Well, that's huge, isn't it? I mean, you can't, 80%, 51% maybe, because then you're talking placebo and everything else. But that kind of a positive effect, it's irrefutable, and now we know why. We know why because the anti-inflammatory cascade is in effect. The inflammation is reduced. And then we come to the cellular energy. It's a complicated thing. You think about the mitochondria as being a engine that produces ATP. ATP is the basis of all energy, all muscle function, nerve transmission. Without that, you can't do anything. You can't exercise, you can't walk, you can't do anything. ATP is what is produced in the mitochondria, and Kangen water up-regulates that production. So once we had that established, I went back to Mr. Oshiro, and these were the first 2 reports on that. And we developed a strategic plan which was going to take us to the next level, and the next level being living human being studies. And these human studies would hopefully show that in a living person, and we chose exercise-related stress. Why? Well, it's simple. It's easy to do. You can easily ask young people to do push-ups and sit-ups and not harm them any. It's relatively inexpensive, and relatively, when you're talking about doing any studies of human beings, it becomes kind of insane. But this is a study that cost less than $100,000, involving 13 human beings that were stressed with exercise, and then had a variety of parameters assessed, including psychological parameters about how they felt before, after, and so on. And these same people did the same study with Kangen water and without Kangen water, and then the differences were analyzed. We also projected that when we would have the results of this study, we would go into details and analyze all of this for what we call cytokines and superoxide dismutase, for things that the body produces in relationship to stress. Good cytokines, bad cytokines, interleukins, other kinds of things that are special messengers within the cell that are activated under stress, that ameliorate stress, subdue stress, increase stress. In other words, the whole gamut of physiologic responses, we wanted to study those in these human beings. So this is our pilot study. This is the first one we did, and this is the one Mr. Oshiro approved. And fundamentally, I don't need to belabor the whole point. 13 people were enrolled, and just as a little aside here, when you enroll human beings in any kind of studies, you have to have an independent board that certifies that the study does not represent any harm to these people, that they're not going to be injured by it. They do a lot of these dangerous studies in prison population because these people sort of can volunteer and they're in a controlled environment and what have you, and they get something out of it. But it's very difficult to do potentially harmful studies. So we had to prove that no one would be harmed. And you know, the oldest person in the study was 33. I don't think 20 sit-ups and push-ups are going to harm them too terribly much, except maybe get them off their butts. You know. But anyway, so this was done, and it was done first with these people taking the Kangen water for 3 weeks, and then doing the exercise study, and then having a washout period, and then they would drink regular water for 3 weeks, and the whole study and everything would be repeated. Okay. We also registered the study with the federal government, the National Institute of Health. And that's important because they look at the design of the study, and they will tell you if the study is sound, if the conclusions that you are drawing from the study are warranted and they are just and they're appropriate, they won't let you register that study with the government. And ours was approved and registered, and you can look it up if you want. Anyway. So, make a long story very short, this was the ad that they had at the laboratory there, and it took a while to get people. I think each person got like $1,500 for the study, but for college students, probably pretty good. And finally, we got enough members to do it. Sorry. And this is a psychologic thing, because you're asking people about feelings. You know, how sore were you? How miserable were you? How this, and the other thing. And there are actually bona fide, legitimate studies that are designed and developed by the American Psychological Associations that are reliable. In other words, they've been tested. The answers, the way the question is asked, so that you can draw a conclusion that's valid from them. Because remember, it's subjective. You're asking somebody, you're not sticking a needle in them and drawing out of blood and getting a number. You're asking their subjective. Push-ups, sit-ups, squats, the usual enchilada there. And then we measured blood lactate, we measured white cell count, we measured red cell counts, and we collected 60 tubes of plasma and serum per person to be frozen for the studies to be done later. And they're still in the vault at 90 below zero, and we're waiting to analyze them. So what were the results? The results were that in this study, we showed that exercise-related stress is ameliorated with ingestion of Kangen water in the following way. By ameliorated, I mean modified, improved. The red blood cell count rises in those people who take the Kangen water significantly by a 10% plus bump in the red cell count. That translates into a significant increase in the oxygen carrying capacity of the cell, of the blood of the person. Why do these runners, we have the Boston Marathon where I go, and the Kenyans win it every year. I mean, forget it. Nobody beats these guys. Why? They live at 10,000 feet. When they come to Boston, their hemoglobin is 50. They got a red cell mass that is huge, and these guys can crank it out because they can put more oxygen. Plus, they're all so skinny, it's unbelievable. And that's why. When you give more red cells, you carry more hemoglobin, you carry more oxygen, you perform better. Mm-hmm. And then we also found that the people who ingested the Kangen water had a much less intense inflammatory pain and stress response, because the neutrophils, the inflammatory cells, were reduced in comparison to those without the Kangen water. So they got over the joke more quickly, they felt better more quickly, and had a better recovery. And then finally, again, subjectively, statistically significant, they all recovered faster, felt better faster, didn't feel any after effects the next day, as opposed to others who took 3 or 4 days to recover. So that's the study, and now what? Well, now what is we're stuck, because for reasons totally unclear to me, these are all these samples, just to make sense, to show you how we got all these samples of tissue and what have you. For reasons unclear to me, the company decided that they weren't going to fund this anymore. It was getting to be too expensive. And so we've been diddling around with this and so on, and I came up with the idea of publishing a small publication that summarizes all these things, and I think it's pretty easy to read. And I also thought that for the first time, distributors like yourselves, you'd have something in your hand that you could say, look, this isn't BS. This isn't, what Dr. Warburg said in 1920, which he never said, but most of what he's quoted to, he never said. But in any case, this is hard data. This is incontrovertible. An approved scientific laboratory has shown this to be true. That's not a claim. A claim is when you say it cures cancer, but you know goddamn well it doesn't. You see, that's a claim. This is not a claim. This is reality. And once this publication came out, I solicited the help of some distributors and what have you. And what I am personally doing, I'm making this thing available for a fee. I get nothing for it. I don't take a dime, and it's going directly to the laboratory. Since I spoke here last, I have been able to put $4,500, because of the sales of these books, into the laboratory, and Fred has put some money in it as well. And so they are now starting the second phase, and they're starting to analyze these samples. And I should have for you, by the beginning of August, an additional report. That doesn't end at all, because the tests for superoxide dismutase are very, very expensive. I'm holding these at bay just to get something that I can report to you later. But I would just encourage you to help support the research in any way you can. And, what can I tell you? I get zero for it. I give my daughter $100 to go and mail all of these orders out and make sure she keeps track for them. That's it. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have. And thank you for coming. I appreciate you being here. Ma'am.
I just came up with an idea.
Yeah.
Do you know, are you familiar with that social media platform, GoFundMe?
No.
That is like, fundraising, and then there's so many energetic distributors on the social media basically.
Well, I will say there have been some distributors who have been really, really dynamite. I think that, oh my goodness, I'm having a brain fart here.
You need some Kangen water.
Yeah, I need some Kangen water, you're right.
Need some
No,
Kangen.
but one of the distributors bought 1,000 books for me.
Wow.
Okay, and the interest is huge. I got a call from Singapore. They want 5,000 books.
Wow.
And the only problem is shipping 5,000 books to Singapore is insane. So what I'm trying to work out with them is I just send them the file and they can print it themselves. But, give us some bucks and we'll stick it into the research. You don't even have to send it to me, send it right to the laboratory.
What the size of the parcel? Because there's the manager, not manager, but marketing guy from Energetic Indonesia is in town. If that's not I can ask him
Sure.
to take it home, on the carry-on.
I am open to pretty much anything. The other thing is I have just finished, and I didn't charge anybody anything. It's out of my own money. I just paid about $800, and they got the whole thing translated into Spanish.
Wow.
And it's a printable file. It's ready. And I have asked, last time I was here, a lot of people in the Spanish community said, "Hey, can you do this?" And I did it. So it's going to be coming out.
Why don't we
soon.
just start GoFundMe on Facebook?
Go ahead. Why don't you do that for him?
I will do that.
Good.
Okay. So I just like everybody to support that, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Questions? Ma'am?
Was there, or do you know of any information on any clinical studies done on osteoporosis with condom water? Or how it would affect?
No. And see, this is so easy to do. Once you have, but you need to have like a background. You need to have a base. Now we have a base. We have a base that really works inside you. And osteoporosis is such a gigantic problem among women. And particularly since, there used to be something against uteruses. I mean, they whacked out more uteruses for minimal reasons. And women get osteoporosis when you muck around with their hormones and stuff. And it's a terrible disease if you don't turn it around. And I think that's a perfect one. Rheumatoid arthritis is another perfect one. How many people do you know in your own families that have rheumatoid arthritis? Hundreds, And this stuff is non-toxic. This isn't some immune modulating agent, like Remicade or all these other things that they're talking about now, none of which are entirely benign. I mean, some of them can actually, the drug can kill you. This stuff, water's never killed anybody, except drowning, I guess. No.
Anything on?
Ma'am? Oh, I'm sorry.
For the people who have cancer, you can say something about the cancer, how the water feels?
I can't say to you that there is or is not an effect on cancer. I can say a couple of things to you about cancer in general. That is, any time that you can improve the underlying stamina, the energy of the host, that host of the tumor has something, ammunition to fight the cancers. I treat a lot of radiation damage from cancer treatment. We have a cancer center where I live up in Arizona, and they got these light-skinned women, and they blast them with 6,000 rads to the chest wall. They come in tears. It's agony. It's a burn. You put 11.5 water in a big Turkish towel, soap, put it on the chest wall, and I just go on and talk to them about this, that, and the other thing. 10 minutes later, they look at me and say, "Doc, what the hell did you just do? It feels much, much better." I'd send them home with a gallon jug and tell them just every day, twice a day, really soak it in there. And they are able to finish their treatment, which is important, and they're comfortable. So we can do a lot of things in relationship to cancer, and we don't need to claim that we cure it, because we probably don't. If any of you are interested, there's a guy named Mukherjee. He's a associate professor of medicine at Harvard, and he works at the Dana-Farber and the Massachusetts General Hospital. He's written a book. It's called The Emperor of All Maladies, and it's all about cancer. And it's about cancer, about how it's caused, where it gets spliced into our genetic makeup to make a malignant cell, and why, with that kind of complexity, we probably never cure it. Tyrannosaurus rex had cancer. Unquestionably. Sarcoma in the bones, found in 60-million-year-old fossils. So cancer's been with us forever. And to make a long story short, this guy Mukherjee also talks about the politics. And the politics are very, very shady, we are of the opinion that you have to throw a lot of money at it, and you have to feel everybody guilty that they're not giving enough to cure cancer. Baloney. We, in our lifetime, will never cure cancer. More people live with cancer now than die from it. You understand? Because we're making a dent into the disease. Well, we can't even remotely talk about a cure.
Thank you.
What was the name of that book again? The Emperor of All.
The Emperor of All Maladies. He's a sweetheart of a guy. It's just funny. Yeah.
You were talking about rheumatoid arthritis and all that stuff, but what about fibromyalgia and nerve damage and all that stuff?
Yeah, again, you know, those would be things worth studying, don't you think?
There's nothing really on it or benefits
No,
of it at all?
we don't. Nobody has studied Kangen water in relationship to any disease. The Japanese have a lot of studies out with inflammatory bowel disease and different things. And they're good studies. They wouldn't fly in our medical community, and I'll tell you why, because they're mixed studies. They will take standard treatment for, say, ulcerative colitis, and then they'll have one group that gets standard treatment without Kangen water, and then with Kangen water, and they'll get a slight bump in improvement. There are too many variables. You've got to study one or two variables, otherwise it becomes exponentially more crazy. Matt?
Do you believe that there will be a lot of studies in the future on alkalized water and how it affects disease?
If I can get through the phases that we want to study, particularly if I can prove that superoxide dismutase, this is the most powerful antioxidant that our body makes. It's insane. I mean, it can destroy peroxidases, which this is how powerful this is. It's made in the liver. If we can show that that is upregulated with Kangen water, huge. That'll be huge. Yep.
Do you drink it?
Yeah.
You drink, and how long have you been drinking the water?
Since 2008.
2008, and have you noticed any kind of differences since drinking the water?
Hey, for a 78-year-old guy, I look pretty good.
You look like you got energy.
I still ride the Harley. Sir.
I have a lot of women that are pregnant that I share the water with, and a lot of them asked me to ask you if there's any information I can bring back to them in regard to benefits from a pregnant woman drinking alkaline water, and maybe if they should be drinking less or more than somebody that's not pregnant.
I'd be lying if I knew the answer. I don't really know the answer. I do know this. There's no downside to them drinking it, and there's no downside to infants drinking it. The only reason we don't give it to infants are probably the most pure immune mechanism God ever made. Yeah. They, on their own, they don't need anything. Yeah. But I got a 9-year-old grandson, he drinks it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as a matter of fact, he's at surfer camp in Port Hueneme up the coast. And here's this kid from Boston, and he gets it. I mean, he is the big kahuna. He gets on that board and he catches the wave.
Dr. Filter?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell me again, because I couldn't quite catch what you were saying about the liver. What's this? What are we looking at?
Superoxide dismutase is an enzyme that's made in the liver. It is the most powerful antioxidant our body makes. That our body makes that antioxidant to fight the most radical elements, you know, the most positive ions that it can. It's dynamite. And so anything that improves the production of that enzyme is going to be huge.
But we don't have the proof of that yet?
That's the next test.
I'm hoping it's in those jars.
Yeah.
Was it superoxide what?
I'm sorry.
What was the name of it?
Superoxide dismutase, SOD.
Will
Will your research have any impact on the FDA at some point?
Yes.
With a second phase?
Yeah,
the one that's gonna be
absolutely.
the critical one for us?
If the FDA is shown hardcore data, they have to agree. You know, take a pill, it has antioxidants and vitamins and stuff in it, they approve that. This is going to be huge, and it absolutely will work. But then again, you know, the FDA is an interesting body. There's a lot of controversy there. But the only way you will ever get an approval from that organization, or the EPA for that matter, when we talk about the sanitary functions of our water, which is the acid pH and so on, without hard, provable data, you got nothing. And they'll put you to the ringer. I mean, it takes 3 to 4 years to get anything approved. But we can't even go up there to them because we got nothing. What do we have?
So how long will the second phase take?
Well, I'm expecting that I will get some answers of part 1 of phase 2 by August. And then if I can raise enough bucks before the end of the year to have that completed.
And then, is there any conditions that people shouldn't be? No.
I make that categorical statement. I don't, do that ordinarily, but there's no downside. There's no condition known to man that would contraindicate drinking Kangen water.
Okay.
Water, and it's better water. Yes, ma'am.
Lastly, what is the exact, do you know the exact amount of money that you need to produce the second phase of this study?
Yeah, the grand total is about $40,000.
All right, and then where, say that other people raised money for you, where could they send the money? How could we send it directly to you?
She's going to start a GoFundMe page.
Oh, okay.
That's one thing. I have a website,
Your website.
ewa-usa.com. And you can don't make a donation if you want, but I'll send you books.
Okay.
And also, if you drop me a line, if you want to make a deal, if you want to sell the books yourself, I'll give you a huge discount.
So I actually have another suggestion for everyone. I think it would be more of a significant impact if there's more than one GoFundMe page, because then people will be able to share their story, because I think you can even do like a video on it. Maybe you can share your own testimonial or somebody else's testimonial. So it's not just coming from one person, but it's going to be more impactful if it's coming from people all over the world that are being helped or are receiving benefits from the water.
I'll write it on the board here, the website.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sure everybody's, giving all the delegates to their social
Oh, yeah. Because testimonial meaning like, hey, now that because of this solid evidence, medical professional is open to listen to what I have to say.
Right. So there will be more prone to get help.
Exactly.
What's that stand for?
That's his website.
What's that stand for? EWA.
What's that?
What's it stand for? EWA.
Electrolyzed Water Association of the United States. It's a not-for-profit organization. I am the president, CEO, secretary,
And toilet cleaner.
And originally, it's patterned after the Japanese Electrolyzed Water Association, but the problem is, again, we're starting early. Funding is an issue. But what we're trying to do is to get electrolyzed water. The different manufacturers, and I'm not trashing anybody, there are great things that are done with this water. Do you know that in the space station, they all drink ionized alkaline water?
Wow.
And they drink pH 9.5, and the only difference is that their ionizer has got copper electrodes. So we don't use copper electrodes because over a long period of time, copper can accumulate in your body. But these people are never up there for more than, well, one guy was up a year, right? But not for a long lifetime. That's why the copper is much more effective and doesn't need as much power to affect the electrolysis. I mean, they recirculate the pee and everything else, and
Wow.
yeah. And by the way, in the former Soviet Union, Russia, they have multiple municipalities now that use ionization to terminally clean up their water. Because in the old Soviet Union, I mean, you talk about people screwing up their country. Same thing happened in East Germany. The amount of toxic waste they just dumped all over the place ruined their water supplies. It really did. China has a gigantic problem, gigantic. They are literally at a point where they can kill themselves. They're so polluted.
But then using ionization, they can clean it up?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
yeah. Wow. But it's a huge, expensive product.
Yeah.
Expensive as hell. Okay. Anything else? Should all go to the bar and have a cocktail.
I have to say, you're talking about that little blue book, I guess. I bought one from Fred Brown.
Yeah.
Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, I got a box.
Yeah, that's
Do you have-
fantastic.
okay.
I quote out of that thing so many times. Because some people say, oh, there's nothing that can help the inflammation, but,
Sure.
so I read right out of your book.
I got some here if you would
Oh,
like
good,
this one.
that's why I
Oh,
said-
yes. Oh, do it.
Oh.
Oh my God, I might have cash. Oh
Holy cow. Actually, the company had those printed for me. This is nice. Sorry. Can't seem to rip it open.
Wow. He's unusual. He's unusually.
Hot lights for cold steel.
Oh.
Thank you. Give everybody one.
Can I write a check to the CW?
Well, I tell you what, order some if you want more. I'll be happy
I need to
to.
donate money.
Thank you.
I get one. But,
Yeah.
no, I want his. You want food? I don't know. One. Don't worry, I'm gonna donate money. I'm gonna donate money. You're in my seat. You're on mind you.
Everybody have one?
That's funding for you, for research.
Well, I understand, but you know, it's like an introductory offer.
Yeah, I bought 10 last time.
Well, there you go. Have another one on the doctor.
I'll get this cause going forward. $10. So you can do a donation to him today for $10.
You can do it online. I really am not very good handling money.
You're on it.
The way this works is it goes right into the bank and the bank automatically sends it to the lab. Are you passing the hat? Oh my goodness. Listen, do you want any more books? Anything?
Oh, more books?
And I'm really hoping that I will have some good info there.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah, because that's
The
November.
best part is I live, an hour and a half.
Oh, good. From Las Vegas.
The Spanish ones you said are gonna come?
Yeah, if you want to drop me a line at EWA, if you want to, they're ready to be printed. I just have to agree on a price. It'll take, I should have them available a week from today.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure it got proofread properly, My daughter is pretty good in Spanish, but she says it's all right, but I think I want a second opinion.
Don't tell her that.
I have two girls, and they're the love of my life. They're just dynamite people, and they always said, "Daddy, we're going to learn German, because you're German." I said, "Absolutely not. You're going to learn Spanish, because you know English and you know Spanish, you can talk to 2/3 of the world." And they're both fluent in Spanish.
Oh, good.
In fact, my oldest daughter is a graduate of the University of Salamanca in Spain.
Oh,
It's the
wow.
oldest university in Europe.
Well, I
It's
speak
back to
some
the 7th
Japanese.
century.
I speak some Japanese. I lived there for 8 years.
Where, in Japan?
And my husband's Japanese.
That's how you immerse yourself in language.
Oh, yeah. Forget it. I studied Spanish in high school. I don't remember anything.
Well, okay.
All right, that's wonderful.
Any other questions? I answer almost anything.
Well, there are it has side effects for chemo and what have you. I remember hearing that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Holy smoly. Big bucks.
Don't go spend it all.
Thank you for your help.
It goes for the funding research.
It's going into the coffers. Thank you. Yeah, sir. Shingles? Well, shingles are an interesting, thank you. Shingles are an interesting condition because you can get shingles as a direct infection, but most people get a recurrence of their original varicella, chickenpox, as shingles. So it lays dormant. So from the point of view of how the water would have anything to do with it, I really don't know. But think of it this way. If you can improve your immune status by drinking an anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, pH-regulating water, you might have a substantial reduction in the incidence. And severity sometimes too. Shingles is nasty. Yeah.
You started to mention about the side effects from chemo.
Well, look, that's another thing. Hydration is so important. They give you these crummy drugs, and they make you sick to your stomach. You vomit all over the place, what have you. What I would tell under the radar, not as an official thing, I'd say to my patients and my friends whose wives they are on chemo or something like that, drink that water, particularly on the day you're going in to have that infusion. Load up on it, because nothing is worse to be dehydrated and throw up.
Oh, yeah.
And the incidence of people, and this again, I don't have a regimented scientific study, but I have enough people in my patient group that I can say those that drink that Kangen water and go through chemo have far less of the nausea, the vomiting, the headaches, and depression and other things.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am. So,
I think we talked about ATP and mitochondria. Spoke about how the overall energy would be going more into water.
it upregulates the rate of the metabolism.
How would that say affect if you have
glucose metabolism gets cranked up. Your blood sugar goes down, your ATP comes up. That's how it's up. So,
relative to chemo, my wife was diagnosed with cancer, given 3 to 6 months.
50,000.
She lasted an additional 3.5 years. So she did pass away, but she was on the more continuous treatment.
So sorry, what you were saying about the depression and all that, would you mind repeating that for the cancer patients, how it might aid them?
right. I think it aids them because hydration is super important in your brain function, in every function of body. You know, sometimes I will give you people, next time I come, I will give you a talk on nothing but hydration. Nothing to do with Kangen water, just water. How utterly important it is in the physiology. We have people in nursing homes. You go to the average nursing home and you walk in the door and it smells of pee. It smells, you know, terrible. Why? These people are chronically dehydrated. Their urine is concentrated to like 10, 20 gravity. And it looks dark and yellow. It smells bad. All you need to do is add water. And these people wake up, they look around, they're back interested in life. Just water. And the European Commission on Aging has developed guidelines for nursing homes throughout Europe, where they make these nursing homes test each patient's urine 3 times a week for specific gravity. And if they're consistently in the high range, they get fined, because that means they're not feeding these people enough water. They're not, and sometimes you gotta, you know, they're old. Some of them want to die, but you gotta make them drink the water. It reduces the overall complication. Everybody's gonna die, we know that. But, you know, go out flaming with the afterburners going, not just sort of shriveling away to nothing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. It's lovely. So, yes, ma'am.
Okay, question is, how many liters we need to drink?
How many liters per day?
Kangen water, yeah.
You need 3 to 4
Well, the thing about 1/2 ounce per pound of body weight, that would make it, what, 20 cc's, 15 cc's per half kilogram, something like that. That depends a little bit, but stop at say 180 pounds, because it's more related to the ideal body weight. Because I've got people that weigh 400 pounds, you know, if they were going to drink, it's impossible. And you know, you won't screw up your pH. If you drink too much of the water, you get water intoxication. Water intoxication means that you dilute your serum sodium to the point when it dips below 120, you can get seizures, tachycardia, you can get cardiac arrest.
So that's why Orlando
And
says
nothing
to
to
take
do with the pH.
Himalayan salt.
Wow, so 2 liters, 3 liters is a lot, right?
3 liters is fine.
It's fine.
Yeah. 4, it might get a little edgy. And then again, it depends upon where you live. You know, I live in the desert. I can drink 6 liters of water a day, and without any problem, because you know, when it's 125 degrees in the Arizona desert, and you do not have any water, you will last 1 hour and 45 minutes before you die.
Wow.
Wow.
Because the humidity is 0, and it will just parch and dry you up. Half of it up.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Thank you so much.
So is it a 1/2 ounce per pound?
1/2 ounce per pound.
In other words, half your body weight. But I would still give them 3-4.
So at least less than a gallon.
People don't understand that.
Well, 3/4. 1/7. 1/7.
1/7. Well, if you drink 3 liters. Well, I think pretty much having one thing based and you know, there's nothing more important.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, of course. I just wanted to.
Well, yeah, when
What is the most ideal type of salt to drink to help the cotton water work better?
Sea salt.
Sea salt.
Sea salt's what it is.
Not the Himalayan,
Sea
and
salt.
not,
Himalayan sea salt.
sea salt. What about high blood pressure?
Same thing. Sea salt is better for your high blood than ordinary salt because it has much more magnesium and calcium than sodium. Table salt is sodium chloride, almost completely, whereas sea salt has all kinds of other things in it that are good for you.
That's why we look so young, don't we?
Under your tongue. You hold it up under your tongue
He just goes to the ocean. Yeah, right. We want to end it when we clap for him, but we haven't ended it yet because I want us to clap for him. Like have an official end.